On my daughter's special day, her arrogant fiancé, Ethan, introduced me to his CEO as a jobless failure. Ethan went quiet when his boss smiled, put a hand on my shoulder and said, "It's great to see you, Mr. Sterling." Then, turning to Ethan, he added with a cold tone, "You're dismissed." Ethan stood stunned, utterly speechless. Before we continue, remember to like this video and share your current time zone in the comments below. A server guided us to a quiet table at Harborview Bistro, and I observed Ethan Hayes straighten his tie before taking his seat. Sophia glowed, her engagement ring shimmering in the soft restaurant lights. "So, Mr. Donovan," Ethan began, not waiting for our beverages. "Sophia tells me you're currently between roles." I blinked. Between roles. The phrase hung in the air like an overly strong cologne, both overwhelming and unnecessary. "I'm retired," I stated plainly, unfolding my napkin. Ethan's smile broadened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Right, of course. Well, I'm with Apex Innovations, a prominent AI solutions firm in the Mid-Atlantic. I'm the senior manager of corporate outreach." "Sounds impressive." I kept my voice even. "How long have you been there?" 3 years now. I've boosted my department's sales by 40%. Ethan leaned back, clearly expecting admiration. "What sector were you in, Mr. Donovan?" "Nothing extraordinary, really. Just commerce." Sophia gently touched Ethan's arm. "Dad's being humble." "He always says that," Ethan nodded knowingly. "I see. Well, the main thing is maintaining good health at your age, isn't it? Keeping busy with pastimes." My grip tightened slightly on my water glass. "At my age." The condescension dripped from his words like syrup from a broken jar. "Hobbies do keep me occupied," I conceded. The server appeared, notepad ready. Ethan ordered the pan-seared scallops with saffron risotto. Sophia chose the herb-crusted cod. I quickly scanned the menu. "I'll take the soup and sandwich special, please." Ethan's eyebrows lifted fractionally. "The soup special? Dad, are you sure? This is meant to be a celebration." Sophia's cheeks flushed. "Ethan, it's fine. Dad prefers simple food." Of course. Ethan waved a dismissive hand. "Everyone has different financial plans. I completely understand." The word plans landed like a slight. He understood, did he? This 34-year-old middle manager understood my financial situation based on a soup order. "Tell me about Apex," I said, redirecting the conversation away from my perceived frugality. "What kind of AI solutions?" Ethan's chest visibly puffed up. "Groundbreaking stuff. Machine learning algorithms for business optimization, predictive analysis, automated decision matrices. We're revolutionizing how enterprises operate." "Fascinating." "The company's been around for about 3 decades, but they really soared in the last 10 years. Before that, probably just another garage startup, you know. Now, we're bringing in substantial revenue." Ethan cut into his scallops with surgical precision. "I'm actually on track for a promotion to division director, perhaps even regional head after that." Sophia smiled proudly. "Ethan's incredibly driven. He sometimes works 60-hour weeks." 60 hours? I raised an eyebrow. "That's commitment." "Success demands sacrifice, Mr. Donovan. That's something my generation comprehends." Ethan's tone implied my generation comprehended very little. The business world moves swiftly now. You have to adapt or get left behind. I took a spoonful of my soup. Surprisingly good roasted red pepper bisque. Change can be challenging. Exactly. That's why I stay updated on industry trends, attend workshops, network constantly. It's not enough to merely coast through existence anymore. Ethan gestured with his fork. People your age, no offense, sometimes get stuck in old methods. The world's different now. Sophia shifted uncomfortably. "Ethan means things have evolved since Dad's era." "Right, evolution." I nodded slowly. Survival of the fittest and all that. Ethan completely missed the sarcasm in my voice. "Precisely. Companies like Apex reward ingenuity and outcomes. Old-fashioned thinking doesn't cut it anymore. We need fresh perspectives, aggressive approaches, and you provide those. Absolutely. My department's figures speak for themselves. 40% growth doesn't happen by chance." Ethan leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, some of the older staff there are, well, let's say they're not keeping pace. Dead weight, if you're being honest about it." Dead weight, I filed that phrase away carefully. "The more experienced employees must have valuable insights, though," I suggested mildly. Ethan shrugged. "Insights without adaptation is just inertia. The company would probably be better off replacing half the veteran staff with eager young talent." Sophia laughed nervously. "Ethan's very passionate about efficiency." "Passion drives results," Ethan continued, warming to his theme. "That's what differentiates winners from—" He glanced at my soup bowl. "Well, from people who settle for less." The insult hung between us like a pall. People who settle for less. People like me, apparently. The unemployed old man ordering soup while his daughter's successful fiancé enjoyed saffron risotto. I set down my spoon deliberately. The metal clinked against the ceramic with surprising sharpness. "Settling can be a choice," I said quietly. Ethan didn't hear the warning in my tone. He was too busy savoring his victory over the pathetic old man across the table. Ethan wiped his mouth with his napkin, clearly energized by what he perceived as my surrender. The scallops on his plate were barely half finished, but he'd already moved into full lecture mode. "You know what, Mr. Donovan? I respect that you're trying to stay optimistic about your situation." His voice carried that particular tone people use when talking to children or the elderly. "But have you considered leveraging your experience? There might be openings." "Experience is fascinating," I replied carefully. "Sometimes it teaches you to stay quiet and observe. But you can't just observe forever." Ethan's enthusiasm bordered on aggressive. "You have to move ahead. Take initiative. I mean, look at me. I plan to become division director within a year, regional head within 3. You have to set objectives, create timelines." Sophia nodded encouragingly. "Ethan's very goal-oriented." "Goals are important," I agreed, "though sometimes the most crucial ones aren't obvious to outsiders." Ethan completely missed the implication. "Exactly. That's why you need to put yourself out there. Network. Meet people. Let them know you're available. I could introduce you to some contacts if you want. Maybe entry-level roles. Nothing too strenuous. Entry-level roles for me." The irony was so dense I could have served it for dessert. "That's very kind of you," I said. "It's about contributing, assisting those less fortunate." Ethan's voice dripped with magnanimity. "Successful individuals have a responsibility to uplift others." Sophia beamed at him. "See, Dad, Ethan truly cares about people." "Oh, I can tell." I took a sip of water. "Your benevolence is quite apparent." Ethan preened under what he took as praise. "It's not about the money for me, Mr. Donovan. Don't get me wrong, the 6-figure compensation is pleasant, but it's about making an impact. Building something significant, 6 figures." He said it like he was announcing the cure for a major illness. "Building something significant," I repeated, like Apex itself was built. Well, sure, but that was different. The founders back then were just fortunate, I guess. Right place, right time. The true innovation is happening now with people like me pushing boundaries. Fortunate. 30 years of 18-hour days, missed family gatherings, and constant financial strain reduced to luck. "The founders were lucky," I said slowly. "Had to be. I mean, what did they really understand about AI back then? The technology barely existed. They probably just stumbled into prosperity." Ethan laughed, the sound grating against my ears. "Now, we're the ones doing the real work, transforming their accidental success into something professional." Sophia sensed the tension building but misread its source. "Dad, Ethan just wants to help. He knows the job market is tough for people starting fresh." Starting fresh? As if my entire career had been erased, leaving me to begin anew from scratch like a recent graduate. "Starting fresh can be liberating," I said, my voice carefully controlled. "It gives you perspective on what truly matters." "Absolutely." Ethan seized on this. "That's the outlook you need. A clean slate, new avenues. You just have to be realistic about your limitations." My limitations. The phrase hung in the air like a dare. What limitations would those be? I asked quietly. Ethan gestured vaguely. Well, age is a factor. Technology moves fast. It's difficult for older workers to keep up. Plus, most companies want people who can grow with them long-term. Long-term growth, I mused. Like 30 years? Exactly. See, you're grasping it. Ethan was pleased with his student's progress. Though, obviously, starting at your age, you're looking at maybe 5 to 10 years maximum before retirement. Companies invest in futures, not, he caught himself. Not what? Not short-term situations, he finished lamely. Sophia reached across the table toward my hand. Dad, maybe we should discuss something else. But Ethan was on a roll now, his voice growing more passionate. The thing is, Mr. Donovan, the business world rewards drive and ambition. It's not enough to just show up anymore. You need foresight, innovation, the ability to disrupt existing conventions. Disrupt conventions, I echoed. Right. Like what I'm doing at Apex. The old guard there, they're stuck in outdated methodologies. They think because they've been around since the beginning, they know everything. But markets evolve. Customer needs change. Sometimes you have to tear down the old systems to build something better. Tear down the old systems built by fortunate founders who stumbled into prosperity. I placed my napkin on the table with deliberate precision. The gesture was quiet, but something in it made Ethan pause mid-sentence. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I think I need some fresh air. Dad! Sophia's voice carried genuine concern. Are you all right? Just weary, I replied, pulling out my wallet. I placed $50 on the table, enough to cover my soup and sandwich plus tip. This should handle my share. Ethan's eyes widened slightly at the cash. Mr. Donovan, you don't have to. I insist. I straightened my jacket. Thank you for dinner and for the career council. Sophia half rose from her chair. Dad, please don't leave. Ethan meant exactly what he said. I looked directly at my daughter's fiancé, and I heard every word. The drive from downtown Denver to my house in Littleton gave me 45 minutes to process what had just occurred. Ethan's words echoed in my mind with each mile. Fortunate founders, dead weight, starting fresh at your age. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the initial anger had solidified into something far more potent. Cold, calculated intent. I unlocked the front door and headed straight to my study. This room was my sanctuary, meticulously arranged to tell the true narrative of my life, the story Ethan Hayes had no inkling existed. The walls were adorned with framed photographs and accolades that I kept hidden from casual visitors. Apex Innovations Incorporation papers from 1992, signed by Marcus Reed and myself. Photos from our inaugural successful product launch. Industry recognition awards spanning 3 decades. The Fortune article from 2015 proclaiming me the quiet visionary of AI development. I sank into my leather chair and stared at the photograph on my desk. Marcus and I in that cramped garage where it all began. We looked so young, so resolute, 30 years old and utterly convinced we could transform the world. We'd been correct. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus's number. He answered on the second ring as always. Porter, how was dinner with the future son-in-law? Enlightening, I said carefully. How are things at the company? Same as always when you're not here. Mayhem and muddle. Marcus's laugh was warm. Seriously, though, everything's operating smoothly. The quarterly reports look excellent. When are you returning from this retirement experiment? Still relishing the break, old friend. Well, enjoy it while you can. Ethan Hayes in sales has been making noise about desiring more accountability. Kid's ambitious, I'll grant him that. My hand tightened on the phone. Ethan Hayes, you know him. Senior sales manager. Been with us 3 years. Actually has some decent ideas, but he's got that ravenous look that makes me uneasy. Keeps talking about modernizing our methodology and disrupting outdated conventions. Disrupting outdated conventions. The same phrase he'd used an hour ago. What kind of disruption? I asked. Oh, the usual young hotshot stuff. Thinks the company would be more efficient without so much legacy thinking. Wants to reorganize divisions, bring in fresh talent. Yesterday, he suggested we might be carrying too much senior dead weight. Senior deadweight. There it was again. Intriguing perspective, I managed. Between you and me, Porter, I think he envisions himself running this place someday. Can't decide if that's admirable ambition or dangerous arrogance. I stared at the photograph of our garage startup days. Easy, maybe both. Probably. Anyway, his sales figures are solid, so I can't complain too much. The board adores him. Marcus paused. You sure you don't want to come back? I miss having someone around who remembers why we founded this company. I remember perfectly, I said quietly. That's precisely why I'm staying away a little longer. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and pulled up Apex Innovation's latest financial statements. 30 years of growth, innovation, and diligent oversight. Annual revenue now approaching $250 million over 900 employees across 5 states. All of it dismissed by Ethan Hayes as fortunate stumbling. I leaned back in my chair and smiled for the first time all evening. Ethan wanted to disrupt conventions. He wanted to eliminate dead weight. Perfect. I'd give him exactly what he was asking for. The wedding was scheduled for July 20th. 4 months to let. Ethan continued believing he'd correctly assessed my worth. 4 months to watch him display his true character to Sophia, to the family, to everyone who mattered. 4 months to plan the most educational experience of his arrogant young life. I pulled out a legal pad and began making notes. Ethan's comments about the founders, his dismissal of experienced employees, his condescending advice about entry-level roles. Every insult, every assumption, every moment of casual cruelty needed to be remembered and addressed. The man wanted to tear down old systems and build something better. Excellent. I'd let him try. I picked up the garage photograph again, studying Marcus's younger face beside mine. We'd built Apex with our bare hands, sacrificing everything for a vision that seemed impossible to everyone else. We'd earned every success, survived every setback, and created something that outlasted the predictions of every expert who'd written us off. Ethan Hayes thought experience without adaptation was inertia. Soon, he'd learn what 3 decades of adaptation looked like when it was directed at a very specific target. I closed the laptop and headed upstairs, already planning tomorrow's activities. I had a facade to maintain, a deception to perfect, and a lesson to prepare. Ethan wanted to see what happened when successful people help those less fortunate. He was about to find out. 2 weeks had passed since that illuminating dinner. I'd spent the time exactly as Ethan would expect, reading newspapers on my front porch, tending my small vegetable patch, playing the role of the aimless retiree perfectly. When I heard the car pull into my driveway that Tuesday afternoon, I was ready. Through my living room window, I watched Ethan emerge from his Tesla, straightening his expensive suit jacket. Sophia bounded up my front steps with obvious excitement, clutching what could only be wedding invitations. Dad! She practically burst through my front door. We have something wonderful to show you. Ethan followed more slowly, his eyes already scanning my modest home with that familiar expression of polite disappointment. The furniture was comfortable but not extravagant. The decorations tasteful but unremarkable, perfect for maintaining my carefully crafted image. Mr. Donovan. Ethan's handshake was firm but brief. Hope we're not interrupting your afternoon pastimes. Afternoon pastimes. As if I spent my days watching television and napping. Not at all, I replied cheerfully. What brings you both here? Sophia produced an elegant ivory envelope with embellishments that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The official wedding invitation. You're the first person to see it. I opened it carefully, admiring the calligraphy and heavy cardstock. This is beautiful, sweetheart. July 20th, Grandview Country Club. Very sophisticated. Ethan chose the venue, Sophia said proudly. It's where all the important Apex events are held. Ethan puffed up slightly. Location matters for occasions like this. My boss will be attending along with several board members. I wanted somewhere that reflects... He gestured vaguely at my living room. Professional standards. Sounds impressive, I said, setting the invitation on my coffee table. I should probably start thinking about what to wear. This was Ethan's moment, and he seized it with enthusiasm. "Actually, Mr. Donovan, that's something I wanted to discuss." His tone shifted to what he probably thought was tactful concern. "My boss will be at the wedding, Marcus Reed. Very influential person in our industry. Perhaps you should dress, how should I put this, more presentably than usual." Sophia shot him a warning look, but Ethan was committed to his mission of improving his future father-in-law's appearance. "I have a perfectly good suit," I said mildly. "I'm sure you do." Ethan's eyes swept over my casual slacks and cardigan. Marcus expects a certain level of refinement from the families of his employees. First impressions matter enormously in business. Marcus expects refinement. If only Ethan knew that Marcus and I had been splitting pizza and working 20-hour days when refinement meant remembering to wear matching socks. "Don't worry, son," I replied with what I hoped was reassuring simplicity. "I know how to handle bosses." Ethan's expression suggested he doubted this claim entirely. "Marcus Reed is a very influential person in our industry, Mr. Donovan. He's built Apex from nothing into a major corporation. Men like that notice everything. How you dress, how you speak, how you carry yourself. Built from nothing. Marcus would appreciate that description, considering we literally started with nothing but determination and credit card debt." "Really?" I kept my voice carefully neutral. "It'll be interesting to meet him." Something in my tone must have struck Ethan as insufficiently odd because he leaned forward earnestly. "Mr. Donovan, I'm not trying to be difficult, but this wedding represents my professional future too. Marcus's opinion of my family connections could affect my career trajectory. I need everyone to make the right impression. The right impression." Translation: I needed to look successful enough to reflect well on Ethan, but not so successful as to overshadow him. "What kind of impression are you hoping for?" I asked. "Respectable, traditional, someone who understands the value of diligence and established principles." Ethan's voice carried the patronizing tone of someone explaining simple concepts to a slow child. Marcus appreciates people who've earned their place through dedication and merit. Earned their place through dedication and merit, like spending 30 years building a company from scratch. Perhaps Sophia sensed the undercurrent of tension. "Dad, maybe we should look at your suit together. I could help you pick out a nice tie." "That's very thoughtful, dear." I smiled at my daughter, genuinely touched by her attempt to bridge the gap between her father and fiancé. "I'm sure I can find something appropriate." Ethan wasn't quite finished with his improvement project. The important thing is projecting dignity. "Mr. Donovan, Marcus has very traditional ideas about family values and personal accountability. He believes people should present themselves with pride, regardless of their circumstances." Regardless of their circumstances. The phrase hung in the air like an elegant insult wrapped in silk and tied with good intentions. "I understand completely," I said. "Personal presentation says a lot about character." "Exactly." Ethan beamed, pleased that his lesson had been absorbed. Character matters more than bank accounts to men like Marcus. He can spot authentic quality from across a room. Authentic quality. Marcus certainly could spot it. We'd been recognizing it in each other for 30 years. Sophia suggested we move to the garden, claiming she wanted to show Ethan my tomato plants. Sophia led me through the sliding glass door into my small backyard garden, leaving Ethan inside, studying the wedding seating charts she'd conveniently left on my dining table. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the neat rows of vegetables I'd been cultivating since retirement. "Dad." Sophia's voice carried a weight. I hadn't heard since she was 16 and trying to explain why she'd borrowed my car without permission. "What are you planning?" I settled onto the wooden bench I'd built last summer, gesturing for her to join me. "Planning? Just trying to be a good host to my future son-in-law." "Don't?" Sophia sat down but turned to face me directly. "I've known you my entire life. You're up to something, and it involves Ethan, and I need to know what it is." Through the glass door, I could see Ethan hunched over the seating charts, probably calculating the optimal positioning relative to Marcus's table. The irony was almost too perfect. "Sweetheart, sometimes people need time to show their true nature." "What does that mean?" Sophia's voice sharpened with frustration. Why won't you tell Ethan the truth about Apex? Why are you letting him think you're some unemployed old man who needs career advice? There it was. My daughter was far more perceptive than Ethan gave her credit for. You know about Apex? I asked carefully. I've always known, Dad. Maybe not the details, but I knew you didn't just work there. You helped create it. Those photographs in your study, the awards you think I don't notice, the way Marcus talks about you when he calls. Sophia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Why are you lying to the man I'm going to marry? I reached over and took her hand. Her engagement ring caught the sunlight, throwing tiny rainbows across the garden dirt. I'm not lying, Sophia. I'm just not volunteering information. That's the same thing, isn't it? I squeezed her fingers gently. Has Ethan asked about my background? Really? Asked with genuine curiosity about who I am as a person? Sophia opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. We both knew Ethan had made assumptions based on my appearance and current lifestyle, never bothering to dig deeper. But this isn't fair. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. He doesn't know he's being tested. Life isn't fair, sweetheart. People judge each other every day based on surface impressions. The question is, what kind of person does Ethan become when he thinks he has the upper hand? Through the glass, Ethan was now pacing while talking on his phone, probably updating someone about his boss attending the wedding. His gestures were animated, self-important. You saw how he treated me at dinner, I continued quietly. The condescension, the unsolicited advice, the casual dismissal of anyone he perceives as unsuccessful. Is that the man you want to spend your life with? Sophia was quiet for a long moment, watching Ethan through the window. He's not always like that. When we're alone, he's different, kinder. I'm sure he is. But character isn't what we do when it's easy, Sophia. It's what we do when we think nobody important is watching. So, you're preparing some kind of lesson for him? Sophia's voice mixed concern with reluctant curiosity. What happens at the wedding when he finds out? I smiled, feeling the familiar satisfaction of a well-laid plan. He gets to learn that assumptions can be dangerous, that treating people with respect isn't about their bank balance or job title, that kindness shouldn't be conditional on social status. And if he doesn't learn, if he gets angry or embarrassed, then you'll know exactly who you're marrying. I turned to look at my daughter directly. Sophia, I'm not trying to sabotage your happiness. I'm trying to protect it. Better to see his true character now than discover it 5 years into marriage. Sophia stared at her hands, turning the engagement ring slowly around her finger. You want me to keep this secret until the wedding? I want you to watch, really watch how Ethan treats people he thinks are beneath him. Watch how he talks about Marcus, about success, about what makes someone worthy of respect. I paused, and then decide for yourself what kind of life you want. What if I decide Ethan is exactly who I thought he was? Then I'll dance at your wedding and welcome him to the family with genuine joy. I meant every word. But Sophia, make sure you're seeing him clearly, not just seeing what you hope is there. Sophia stood up, brushing dirt from her jeans. Through the glass, Ethan was ending his phone call, looking around for us with mild impatience. He's going to hate you when he finds out, she said quietly. Probably. The question is, will he hate himself for how he's treated me? Sophia looked at me for a long moment, wrestling with loyalties and uncertainties. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, Dad, I'll keep your secret. But promise me you're not doing this just for revenge. I promise you, sweetheart. Everything I'm doing is because I love you. Ethan appeared at the sliding door, tapping his watch. Sophia, we should probably head out soon. I have a conference call with the West Coast team in an hour. Coming. Sophia called back, then looked at me one more time. Just be gentle with him, okay? Whatever you're planning. I stood up and kissed her forehead. Gentle lessons are rarely the ones that stick. The months between April and July passed in a carefully orchestrated dance of preparation. While Ethan continued his condescending check-ins, and Sophia maintained our agreed-upon silence, I methodically arranged every detail of the most educational wedding gift of Ethan's young life. 3 days before the wedding, I stood in Giovanni's bespoke tailoring on Park Avenue, studying myself in the three-way mirror. The charcoal gray suit was impeccably cut but deliberately understated, expensive enough to command respect, conservative enough to avoid suspicion. "The fit is perfect, Mr. Donovan," Giovanni said, adjusting the jacket shoulders with practiced precision. "This suit will emphasize your distinction without shouting about price tags." "That's exactly the point," I replied, admiring how the subtle pinstripes caught the light. "The important thing is that it says the right things without words." "Ah, you comprehend sophistication." Giovanni smiled approvingly. "True excellence speaks in whispers, not shouts." 2 days before the wedding, I visited Regal Jewels on Fifth Avenue. The sales associate, a sharp woman in her 40s, spread several options across black velvet. "These Apex logo cufflinks are quite striking," she said, holding up a pair of platinum pieces with the company's distinctive diamond chip A. "Custom ordered, I assume?" "A small commemorative piece," I said, fastening them to my shirt cuffs. They caught the store's lighting beautifully, subtle enough to appear understated, distinctive enough for Marcus to recognize immediately. "Excellent choice. They suggest accomplishment without ostentation." The day before the wedding, I met with Eleanor Vance, my private banker at Metropolitan National. Her corner office overlooked the Hudson River, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the endless blue horizon. Such a substantial amount for a wedding gift. Eleanor raised her eyebrows as she reviewed the transfer documents. "Are you absolutely certain about this figure, Porter?" "This is a very special occasion," I replied, signing the authorization with deliberate strokes. "My daughter deserves the finest wedding gift possible. $75,000 is certainly generous, even by your standards." Eleanor processed the paperwork efficiently. "Cash or certified check?" "Certified check. I want the amount clearly visible when it's presented." That evening, I walked along the Hudson River Walk, my usual route for serious contemplation. The water stretched endlessly southward, its surface rippling with late afternoon sunlight. Tomorrow's rehearsal dinner would begin the final act of Ethan's education. I thought about Marcus's likely reaction when he spotted the Apex cufflinks. Marcus had suggested those exact cufflinks as company gifts 5 years ago. He'd remember them instantly. The moment of recognition would be worth 30 years of patience. Ethan had spent months preparing his boss for the wedding of a hard-working employee to the daughter of an unfortunate old man. Marcus would arrive expecting to make polite conversation with Ethan's down-on-his-luck future father-in-law, perhaps offer some charitable words about the dignity of honest labor. Instead, he'd discover his co-founder sitting at the family table, wearing their company logo and writing wedding checks that exceeded Ethan's annual salary. I stopped walking and stared out at the horizon. The river was calm today, its surface like glass. Tomorrow would bring turbulence, but sometimes turbulence was necessary to clear the air. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Rehearsal dinner. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Ethan's very excited about you meeting Marcus." "Still time to change your mind about this, Dad," I typed back. "Looking forward to it, sweetheart. Everything will unfold precisely as it should," which was accurate. Ethan would receive exactly what he had been inviting, an opportunity to exhibit his genuine character in front of the people who mattered most. He'd demonstrate his principles, his priorities, and his definition of human worth. The only variable would be the reaction of the observers. I turned and walked back toward my car, feeling the satisfaction of a blueprint nearing perfect execution. Tomorrow night, Ethan would discover that assumptions can be costly. By Sunday, he'd have learned that respect shouldn't be conditional on perceived social status. The gentle river currents lapped against the shore behind me, steady and inexorable as time itself. The Bellevue Hotel's marble lobby glistened under crystal chandeliers as I passed through the revolving doors, my reflection multiplying in the polished surfaces. 20 minutes earlier, I'd driven from Littleton with the contentment of a chess master preparing checkmate. Tomorrow would bring the disclosure, but tonight offered one final chance to observe Ethan's true nature. The rehearsal was set in the hotel's small sanctuary, an intimate space with mahogany benches and stained glass panels overlooking Park Avenue. Sophia stood near the altar in her rehearsal gown, radiant despite the tension I could sense in her posture. She caught my eye and offered a hesitant smile, the look of someone guarding a significant secret. Ethan emerged from a group of his Apex colleagues, adjusting his tie with the self-important gesture I'd come to recognize. His voice carried across the sanctuary as he spotted me. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Sophia's father." Ethan's tone held that familiar condescension, magnified by the presence of his professional audience. "This is Porter Donovan, a retiree who lives simply in Littleton." Lives simply. The phrase hung in the air like expensive perfume meant to establish a social hierarchy for his colleagues' benefit. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Donovan," said a woman in an expensive suit. "Ethan's told us you're enjoying your retirement." "Very much so," I replied, shaking her hand. "Though retirement can be quite educational." Ethan's colleagues nodded politely, their interest already fading. In their world, retirees were background noise. Pleasant enough, but irrelevant to serious discourse. "Dad has unpretentious tastes," Ethan continued, his voice just loud enough for nearby guests to overhear. "Nothing wrong with that, of course. Different generations, different expectations." Different expectations. I felt my jaw tighten slightly, the first minor lapse in my carefully maintained composure. "Ethan," I said quietly, "be careful with your judgments. Tomorrow might bring surprises." He laughed, the sound carrying more confidence than wisdom. "Mr. Donovan, you don't need to lecture me about people. I assess character professionally. It's vital in outreach." "We'll see." The two words dropped between us like pebbles in still water. Something in my tone made Ethan pause, but his colleagues were watching, and backing down would damage his carefully constructed image. "What I mean is," Ethan pressed on, "success leaves clear signs. How someone dresses, where they reside, what they drive, these things indicate priorities and capabilities." An interesting hypothesis. It's not a hypothesis. It's empirical observation. Take Marcus Reed, my boss, arriving tomorrow. You can recognize his quality from across a room. That's earned respect, not accidental. Earned respect. Marcus would find that description amusing, considering we'd earned our respect together, sleeping on office floors and surviving on takeout for 3 years. Sophia moved closer, sensing the danger. Maybe we should focus on tomorrow's ceremony. But Ethan was warming to his theme, emboldened by his audience. "The point is, Mr. Donovan, that character reveals itself in choices. Marcus chose excellence at every juncture. Others," he gestured vaguely in my direction, "others choose comfort over achievement. Comfort over achievement." The slight was precise, surgical, designed to wound without appearing overtly cruel. "You're very certain in your evaluations," I said, my voice carrying the first hint of steel. "Certainty comes from accuracy. I've never misjudged someone's capabilities." Ethan's smile suggested he'd just won an important point. "Never, not once. People reveal themselves quickly if you know what to look for." I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of 4 months of patience crystallizing into cold intent. The sanctuary fell quiet, conversation ceasing as guests sensed an approaching conflict. "Ethan, you're absolutely right about one thing," I said, buttoning my jacket with deliberate care. "Character does show in choices." "Exactly my point. Tomorrow you'll have several opportunities to demonstrate yours." Ethan's confidence flickered slightly. "What's that supposed to imply?" "It means," I said, walking toward the chapel exit, "that assumptions can be expensive, especially when they're made in front of people who matter. Mr. Donovan, I don't appreciate. Good night. Ethan." I paused at the sanctuary door, looking back at the assembled guests. "Enjoy your rehearsal. Tomorrow promises to be memorable." Sophia started after me. "Dad, wait." "See you tomorrow, sweetheart. Everything will be exactly as it should be." I walked through the hotel lobby with measured steps, past the doorman's respectful nod, into the cool Denver evening. Behind me, I could hear Ethan's voice resuming its confident pitch, likely explaining my departure to his colleagues as evidence of an old man's fragile ego. Let him talk. Tomorrow morning, those same colleagues would witness the most educational experience of Ethan Hayes' professional life. My car was waiting in the hotel's circular drive. As I settled behind the wheel, I caught a glimpse of the sanctuary through the hotel's windows. Ethan gesturing animatedly, Sophia watching the door where I'd disappeared, the wedding party resuming their positions. Tomorrow would bring justice. Tonight brought the sweet anticipation of a plan reaching perfect fruition. The drive from downtown Denver to Littleton gave me 30 minutes to transform the sharp frustration of confrontation into the calm determination of justice. By the time I pulled into my driveway, Ethan's latest slights had solidified into final confirmation that tomorrow's lesson was not just justified, it was necessary. I sat in my darkened car for a moment, staring at my modest house. 4 months ago, Ethan had dismissed the same home as evidence of my failure. Tomorrow, he'd learn that success wasn't always displayed in mansion size or luxury vehicle brands. Inside, I went straight to my study and opened the laptop. Marcus had sent an email earlier. Looking forward to meeting your future son-in-law tomorrow. Ethan sounds like an ambitious young man. Ambitious? That was one word for it. I typed back, "Tomorrow you'll meet someone very interesting at the wedding, Marcus." His response came within minutes. Who would that be? My future son-in-law. I think you'll have much to discuss about character and professional advancement. Intriguing. Should I be prepared for anything specific? Just be yourself, old friend. Your natural wisdom will be sufficient. I closed the laptop and moved to my bedroom, where tomorrow's wedding attire hung perfectly pressed. The charcoal suit looked dignified but unremarkable, exactly the impression I wanted until the moment of revelation. The Apex cufflinks sat in their velvet box, waiting to catch Marcus's attention at precisely the right moment. From my desk drawer, I retrieved the certified check I'd picked up yesterday. $75,000 made out to Sophia and Ethan Hayes. The amount was carefully chosen, generous enough to demonstrate substantial wealth, large enough to shatter Ethan's presumptions about my simple circumstances. I thought about tonight's rehearsal, Ethan's confident declaration that he'd never misjudged someone's capabilities. The arrogance had been breathtaking, even by his standards. But it was perfect. Tomorrow's humiliation would be complete, precisely because his confidence was so absolute. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Dad, are you okay?" "Ethan feels bad about tonight," I typed back. "Ethan feels exactly what he should feel. Tomorrow will clarify everything for everyone. I'm worried about what you're planning." "Don't worry, sweetheart. Justice is rarely as harsh as people fear." She didn't respond, probably wrestling with the same conflicted loyalties that had troubled her since our garden conversation. Part of her wanted to warn Ethan to soften tomorrow's blow, but a larger part understood that some lessons could only be learned through experience. I walked to my study window and looked out at the quiet street. My neighbors were settling in for the evening, reading, watching television, living the comfortable retired lives Ethan imagined were my only option. None of them knew that tomorrow would bring the most satisfying moment of my professional life. Marcus's confusion had been perfect. He genuinely had no idea what awaited him at the wedding. When he spotted the Apex cufflinks, when Ethan introduced me as Sophia's unemployed father, when the moment of recognition finally came, Marcus's expression would be worth 30 years of partnership. I reviewed Ethan's behavior one final time. The restaurant condescension, the career council, the dismissal of dead-weight employees. Tonight's lecture about character revealing itself through choices. Every insult had been carefully catalogued, every assumption documented. Tomorrow, Ethan would discover that character did indeed reveal itself through choices, and his choices had revealed far more than he intended. I prepared for bed with the methodical calm of a surgeon before a complex operation. Everything was ready. The suit, the cufflinks, the check, the perfect venue with Ethan's boss and colleagues as witnesses. Sophia knew enough to stay out of the way when the moment came. As I turned off the bedside lamp, I felt the deep satisfaction of a plan approaching flawless execution. Ethan had spent months demonstrating his values, his priorities, his definition of human worth. Tomorrow he'd learn that assumptions about success could be extremely costly, especially when those assumptions were made in front of the people who actually controlled his professional future. Sleep came easily, filled with dreams of justice finally served. The morning of July 20th dawned crisp and clear, the Denver skyline gleaming under perfect wedding weather. I dressed with the careful attention of an actor preparing for his most important performance, fastening the apex cufflinks with particular satisfaction. Today, these small platinum symbols would speak louder than any words. The Bellevue Hotel buzzed with wedding activity when I arrived at noon. Sophia was upstairs in the bridal suite, likely managing her nervous energy with final dress adjustments. I made my way to the small sanctuary where guests were beginning to gather. Marcus stood near the front, distinguished in his navy suit, scanning the assembled crowd with the curious interest of someone meeting his employee's new family. He spotted me across the chapel and nodded politely, a stranger acknowledging another stranger at a mutual acquaintance's wedding. Ethan emerged from a side room, resplendent in his formal wear, his confidence radiating like expensive cologne. He was scanning the crowd, too, probably ensuring Marcus had the best possible view of the ceremony. When his eyes met mine, I saw a flicker of uncertainty, last night's confrontation still echoing. "Mr. Donovan," Ethan approached with forced joviality. "Glad you decided to come after our discussion last night." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied. "This promises to be unforgettable." Ethan's smile tightened slightly, but he was too focused on today's performance to dwell on cryptic warnings. His colleagues from Apex had claimed seats in the third row, perfect witnesses for whatever was about to unfold. The processional music began, and I took my position near the sanctuary entrance. Sophia appeared at the top of the aisle, radiant in her grandmother's restored wedding dress, her face glowing with nervous joy. She tucked her arm through mine, and for a moment, the elaborate scheme faded into simple paternal pride. "You look beautiful." "Sweetheart," I whispered as we began our walk. "Thank you." "Dad." Her voice carried a tremor of emotion and anticipation for everything. We moved down the aisle at the traditional measured pace, guests rising in respectful acknowledgement. Ethan stood at the altar, his eyes fixed on Sophia with genuine affection that reminded me why she'd fallen in love with him. Marcus watched from his front row seat, probably calculating the appropriate level of enthusiasm for his employee's wedding. The officiant, a distinguished woman in formal robes, raised her hands as we reached the altar. "Who gives this woman in marriage?" "I do," I said clearly, my voice carrying to every corner of the sanctuary. "Her father, with great love and hope for her happiness." Sophia squeezed my hand before releasing it, and I formally placed her hand in Ethan's. For a moment, the three of us stood together, father, daughter, and son-in-law, while the sanctuary watched in reverent silence. "Be happy, dear," I whispered to Sophia, kissing her cheek before taking my seat in the front row. The ceremony proceeded with traditional dignity. Ethan and Sophia exchanged vows with obvious sincerity, their words carrying genuine emotion despite the undercurrents of tension. I found myself genuinely moved by their declarations of love and commitment, even as I anticipated the education that would follow. Marcus sat 2 seats away, occasionally glancing in my direction with polite curiosity. Soon enough, that curiosity would transform into something far more interesting. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and Ethan kissed Sophia with the enthusiasm of a man who believed his future was perfectly secure. The sanctuary erupted in applause, guests rising to celebrate the new couple as wedding bells chimed from the hotel's sound system. As the recessional began, I noticed Ethan scanning the crowd again, his eyes finding Marcus with obvious satisfaction. He'd successfully married the woman he loved in front of his professional mentor, having navigated the potential embarrassment of his unemployed father-in-law without incident. The receiving line formed in the sanctuary's vestibule, guests offering congratulations as Sophia and Ethan beamed with newlywed joy. I positioned myself appropriately as father of the bride, accepting well wishes and compliments about the beautiful ceremony. Ethan was in his element now, introducing Sophia to his colleagues with obvious pride. "My wife," he kept saying, savoring the new title. His confidence had returned completely, last night's confrontation forgotten in the glow of wedding success. Through the crowd, I saw Marcus approaching the receiving line, probably preparing to offer appropriate congratulations to his employee's new family. The moment I'd been orchestrating for 4 months was finally at hand. Ethan spotted Marcus's approach and straightened unconsciously, the ambitious employee preparing to impress his boss one final time. The hotel's banquet hall sparkled under crystal chandeliers, transformed into an elegant reception space during the 2 hours between ceremony and celebration. Guests mingled with champagne glasses, their conversations mixing with soft jazz from the hotel's string quartet. I positioned myself near the bar, watching Ethan work the room with practiced enthusiasm. Marcus stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, his distinguished profile outlined against the afternoon sunlight. He'd spent the ceremony observing politely, probably calculating the appropriate level of engagement with his employee's new family. Soon, that calculation would become irrelevant. Ethan approached Marcus with the calculated confidence of an ambitious subordinate, Sophia's hand tucked proudly through his arm. This was his moment, introducing his beautiful new wife to the man who controlled his professional future while demonstrating his superior social connections. Mr. Reed, Ethan's voice carried perfectly across the reception noise. "I'd like you to meet my wife, Sophia, and her father." I moved closer, timing my approach with the precision of a watchmaker. 4 months of patience were about to pay dividends that would compound for years. Marcus turned with polite interest, extending his hand to Sophia. "Congratulations, my dear. Ethan speaks of you constantly." "Thank you, Mr. Reed. Ethan admires you tremendously." Ethan beamed at this exchange, his chest visibly swelling with pride. Then he gestured toward me with casual condescension. "And this is my father-in-law, Porter Donovan." Ethan's tone shifted subtly, carrying just enough dismissal to establish hierarchy. He's an unemployed retiree who lives simply in Littleton." The words hung in the air like expensive perfume, obvious to everyone within hearing distance. Several of Ethan's colleagues had drifted closer, probably expecting another demonstration of their rising star's social superiority. Marcus's head turned toward me slowly, his executive-trained composure slipping for just a moment. His eyes found my face, then dropped immediately to my cufflinks. The Apex logo caught the chandelier light perfectly, platinum and diamond spelling out 30 years of partnership. "Porter." Marcus's voice carried genuine shock. "Porter Donovan." Ethan blinked, clearly not expecting this level of recognition. "You know him?" "Know him." Marcus's voice rose slightly, drawing attention from nearby conversations. "Porter, what in the blazes are you doing here?" "Attending my daughter's wedding," I replied calmly, extending my hand. "Good to see you, Marcus. You look well." Ethan's face cycled through confusion, suspicion, and growing alarm. "Mr. Reed, I think there might be some mistake. This is just Sophia's father. He's unemployed." Marcus stared at Ethan as if he'd just announced his intention to become a professional street performer. "Unemployed, Ethan? This is Porter Donovan, co-founder of Apex Innovations, my business partner for 30 years. The words hit Ethan like physical blows. I watched his face transform from confident superiority to dawning horror, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Around us, conversations had stopped entirely, wedding guests sensing drama more compelling than small talk. "Partner?" Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "That's impossible. He's just what?" Marcus's tone had shifted from surprise to something considerably less friendly. "Just the man who built our company from nothing. Just the genius who created half our core technologies. Just my closest friend and business colleague." Ethan turned to stare at me, his face pale beneath his wedding tan. You're really co-founder and primary shareholder of Apex Innovations," I confirmed quietly. "The company where you've spent 3 years explaining to me how business really works." Sophia moved closer to Ethan, her face a mixture of sympathy and anxiety. She'd known this moment was coming but couldn't have prepared for the public devastation written across her new husband's features. Marcus's executive instincts were kicking in now, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to difficult personnel decisions. "Ethan, exactly what have you been saying to my business partner?" Ethan's mouth worked soundlessly, his confident wedding day persona crumbling like expensive paper in the rain. The colleagues who'd been impressed by his networking skills were now witnessing the most spectacular professional implosion in Apex's 30-year history. "I didn't know," Ethan finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "He never told me." Marcus's expression suggested this explanation was entirely insufficient. Ethan's face had gone from wedding day glow to surgical sheet pallor in less than 30 seconds. Around us, the reception had transformed from elegant celebration to riveting spectacle, guests forming a loose circle around our group like spectators at an unexpected street performance. "Mr. Reed, please." "I didn't know." Ethan's voice carried the desperation of a man watching his career evaporate in real time. "He never told me he worked at Apex." "Worked at?" Marcus's eyebrows rose with dangerous calm. "Ethan, Porter doesn't work at Apex. Porter is Apex. Half the patents on our core technologies bear his signature." The information hit Ethan like successive physical blows. I could almost see him calculating the full scope of his mistake. Every condescending comment, every piece of unsolicited advice, every moment of casual dismissal playing back in devastating clarity. "I can explain everything." Ethan's voice cracked as he turned between Marcus and me with frantic energy. "There's been a misunderstanding." The only misunderstanding. Marcus's voice had acquired the steel that made him formidable in boardroom negotiations. Is how my senior sales manager could treat my business partner like a charity case for 4 months without anyone telling me. Sophia moved protectively toward Ethan, her wedding dress rustling against the growing tension. "Mr. Reed, Ethan honestly didn't know. Dad never mentioned the company connection." "Your father shouldn't have needed to mention it," Marcus replied, his attention fixed on Ethan with laser intensity. "Basic human respect isn't conditional on someone's job title or bank balance." Ethan was spiraling now, his hands gesturing wildly as words tumbled out without coherent structure. "The thing is, Mr. Reed, I always treat people with respect. Always. I was just trying to help, offering guidance. You know, career advice." "Career advice?" Marcus's voice could have frozen the champagne. "You offered career advice to the man who created your job?" The nearby guests were no longer pretending to have other conversations. Ethan's Apex colleagues stood frozen, probably calculating their own professional distances from the unfolding disaster. The hotel staff had quietly positioned themselves around the perimeter, uncertain whether to intervene or simply document the entertainment. "Ethan," Marcus continued with the methodical precision of an experienced executioner, "explain to me how someone demonstrates respect by calling their business partner unemployed, dead weight." Ethan's eyes widened with pure panic. "I never said that. I would never." "Monday morning," Marcus's voice cut through Ethan's protests like a surgical blade. "You can explain your definition of respect to human resources. You can also start looking for new employment." "No." Ethan's composure shattered completely. "Mr. Reed, please. This is my wedding day. I made a mistake, but I can fix this." "The mistake," Marcus replied coldly, "was mine. For promoting someone who judges people by their appearance rather than their character." Ethan's face had progressed from pale to gray, his breathing shallow and rapid. Sophia reached for his arm, but he was too far gone in panic to notice comfort. Around us, the wedding reception had become a cautionary tale about the dangers of assumptions. "There has to be something I can do," Ethan pleaded, his voice breaking like an adolescent's. "Some way to make this right. I'll apologize publicly. Take a demotion. Anything." Marcus looked at Ethan with the expression of someone discovering mold in expensive wine. "You'll apologize to Porter, certainly. Whether that changes anything remains to be seen." Ethan's head snapped toward me with desperate hope, his eyes wide with the kind of panic reserved for people watching everything they'd worked for disappear simultaneously. The confident young executive who'd lectured me about business success had been replaced by someone who looked like he might collapse at any moment. "Mr. Donovan." "Porter, please!" Ethan's voice trembled with genuine terror. I know I made mistakes, but I can learn. I can change. Please don't let him destroy my career. The moment hung between us like a sword, sharp and gleaming and ready to fall. Ethan stood before me with his entire future balanced on the edge of my next words, his face a study in absolute desperation. Sophia watched with tears threatening her wedding makeup, torn between the two men she loved most. Marcus waited with the patient intensity of someone prepared to execute a professional death sentence. The wedding guests formed a silent amphitheater around us, their champagne glasses forgotten as they witnessed a moment that would be discussed at Denver social events for years to come. "Marcus," I said quietly, my voice carrying clearly in the hushed banquet hall. Wait, Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly, but he remained silent, deferring to his partner's judgment, as he had for 3 decades. I looked at Ethan, seeing not the arrogant young man who'd condescended to me for months, but someone who had just learned the most expensive lesson of his professional life. His hands trembled slightly as he waited for my verdict. "Ethan," I said, keeping my voice gentle but firm, "look at me." He raised his eyes, and I saw genuine remorse there, not just fear for his career, but actual understanding of what he'd done wrong. "I accept your apology," I continued, watching relief flood his features. "But I have one condition for my forgiveness." "Anything," Ethan whispered. "Absolutely anything. Never again judge someone's worth by the size of their paycheck or the label on their clothes." I paused, letting the words sink in. Character isn't measured in dollar signs, and respect shouldn't depend on bank statements. Ethan nodded vigorously, tears of relief and genuine remorse mixing in his eyes. "I understand. I promise. I've learned my lesson." I turned to Marcus, who was watching our exchange with the careful attention of someone evaluating a critical business decision. "Marcus, Ethan made assumptions based on incomplete information. We've all done that at various points in our careers." Marcus's expression softened slightly, though his executive instincts remained engaged. "Are you asking me to overlook 4 months of disrespect toward my business partner?" "I'm asking you to consider that sometimes the best lessons come from mercy rather than punishment." I placed my hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Ethan has a good track record at the company. His sales numbers speak for themselves. Perhaps this experience will make him a better manager, not just a more careful one." Ethan looked between Marcus and me with the expression of someone watching his entire future being negotiated by forces beyond his control. Sophia stepped closer, her hand finding Ethan's arm in a gesture of support and solidarity. Marcus studied Ethan for a long moment, his businessman's instincts warring with his respect for his partner's judgment. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Ethan." Marcus's voice carried formal authority but had lost its sharp edge. "You'll keep your position, but you're on probation for 6 months. Any hint of the attitudes Porter described, and you're gone. Understood?" "Completely." "Completely," Ethan managed, his voice thick with gratitude and exhaustion. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. Thank you both." I extended my hand to Ethan, and he shook it with the grip of someone sealing a sacred covenant. "Welcome to the family, son," I said quietly. "Try to remember that everyone deserves respect until they prove otherwise." "I will," Ethan promised. "I absolutely will." Sophia stepped forward and embraced both of us simultaneously, her joy evident despite the traumatic revelation. Around us, the wedding guests began to relax, conversations resuming as the drama resolved into something resembling family harmony. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder, his familiar grin returning. 30 years, and you can still surprise me, partner." "Retirement keeps life interesting," I replied. The string quartet, sensing the crisis had passed, resumed their gentle melodies. Champagne glasses were raised again. Conversations returned to normal wedding topics, and Ethan learned that sometimes the most important lessons come wrapped in unexpected packages. As the reception continued around us, I watched Ethan interact with other guests, noting the subtle changes in his demeanor. The edge of superiority had been replaced by something that looked remarkably like humility. Sometimes justice served with wisdom tasted sweeter than revenge. "If you like this story, Please like this video and subscribe to our channel.